One of the biggest quarterback battles in training camp right now is over in California with the San Francisco 49ers. It's a three-man race, essentially. Who's going to come out the victor and what happens to the loser? We'll tell you next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on Twitter at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout over with the Draft Network, as well as the host of the Locked On Clemson Football Tiger podcast. And guys, thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day, Monday through Friday. Appreciate y'all for tapping in and being our family, but also being our every single day. As always, as we get ready for football returning, I got my guy, the champ, the man with the ring and the title, my boy, Mr. LSU Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on Twitter at the Talent Code. Keith, talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst with the Draft Network, man. And like my guy DP cues me up 5 days a week, 2019 national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. But you know why we're here, right? Your dynamic duo. We are here to bring you championship-level content surrounding the NFL draft 24/7, 365. And if I sound like I have a little bit more pep in my step, if my voice is coming through a little bit clearer, it's because we're getting closer and closer to football season, man. We had a fun one yesterday talking about the quarterback battles, right? Training camp edition. We're going through these positional battles, and we're continuing the quarterback battles, and we have this thing getting kicked off, DP, with the 49ers, right? If you go to YouTube, you're going to see out there, and you say three's a crowd because they have three quarterbacks that could potentially be the star. But before we get into that conversation, DP, why don't you kick them off with our title sponsor?
This episode of Locked On NFL Draft is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. The quarterback battle in San Fran is a three-man race. And like you said, Keith, three is a crowd. So you got to figure out who's your guy.
Yeah, and so what makes this race interesting, right, is it's not three of the same things, right? It's not three, mobile guys. It's not three. It's literally three of a crowd, but it's three of differing crowds, right? Like they took a sample of everything. You have Sam Darnold, the veteran who has seen ghosts in his days, right, from the time in New York Jets. You have Brock Purdy, who he's Brock Purdy, right? But he has some of the coolest nicknames I've ever heard for
Mr. Relevant now.
Yeah, right. He's Mr. Relevant now. And then you have Trey Lance, the guy that had all the tools in the world, who they moved up. They traded multiple first-round draft picks to get to Trey Lance, and has yet to really even string together, I guess you can say, any type of resume, right? Like he still doesn't have a resume in NFL going into year 3. So, DP, I'm going to kick this question off with a simple: who's winning this quarterback battle?
Man, I feel, if this is an open competition, I'm going to lean to Trey Lance. I lean to him being healthy, being able to, and I watched the video of him training, and I know that there were reports that he was training with Patrick Mahomes, QB coach and throwing instructor. And when I was watching the video, I watched some clips. When I watched that full video that's up on YouTube of him throwing and him working out, in Fort Worth, Texas, you see the improvement in mechanics, right? The throwing motions changed, the footwork has changed, everything that he needed to, because he had an elongated motion. He wasn't really technically refined, and you see the technique and the mechanics much cleaner, much more crisp, and much more detailed. And he just had this business-like look on his face. No matter if he hit a throw or if he was slightly off, but there still was a reception, he didn't, there weren't any peaks and valleys. We see a guy got excited, then got low. It just was a stone-cold, hard-working face. So I think if this is an true open competition, right, Brock Purdy's ready to go. Sam Darnold's there. Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance has all the physical tools and the ability to showcase, right, and stack days to showcase himself in a way that Kyle Shanahan looks like, okay, this is what I wanted to see from the guy that we traded up for. This is who I want. And I think that's what Kyle Shanahan, at the end of the day, that's what he needs to see. But I'm going to say something, Keith. I'm going to flip and ask you something. Out of these three quarterbacks, who has the most pressure? Because I'm going to tell you who I really believe it is. It's not Trey Lance. Trey Lance doesn't have the pressure.
That's
Brock Purdy.
I was going to say the opposite. I think if you ask me the pressure, I'm going to go with it is Trey Lance, because we kind of discussed it a little bit, right? We didn't get on depth, but Sam Darnold is who he is. That's how we feel about him, right? Like he's a backup, wily veteran, and hopefully, right, like him in this quarterback system that is very quarterback friendly to quarterbacks, we can see the best version of him. But I don't think 49ers fans and as a whole NFL fans are putting a lot of pressure on Sam Darnold. So I'm taking him out of this equation, right? Now it's Brock Purdy and it's Trey Lance. Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. Trey Lance, we spent 3 first-round picks on. I need something from him, right? And then the next step is this, that he still has the feel-good story around him. The Brock Purdy, that conversation, people talking about if he could be the next Tom Brady because Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick, he was a 7th-round pick. He still has that. And then this is the thing, though. When you have that type of position, right, of your Mr. Irrelevant, when you fail, you still just regress to the means, right? You still just what people thought. So it's like you're not a disappointment. I'm just all who, you know how they say, like, I am who you think I am. And I think that's kind of what comes across from me. So if you had to ask me, DP, and I had to give you an answer on that, I would put it on Trey Lance. And not so much of just full-fledged, okay, all the pressure is on you. You have to deliver. But he has to do something. I think that's where we are with Trey Lance. Like it's not embarrassing, but let's use the word interesting, right? If he loses, if you're the number 3 pick and then you lose to a guy that got drafted a year later as Mr. Irrelevant, like, so that's kind of where I'm at with that, potentially with the pressure.
Those are all good points.
What is your angle? I want to see if you can kind of sway this one way or the other.
You made some really good points. I'm going to tell you why I feel like it's Brock Purdy. So the media, the fans, everybody's behind Brock. Nobody's really behind Trey at all. Like, they're already crowning Brock as the guy. And I think it was in the spring, GM John Lynch was like, yeah, we had to play a game today and Brock Purdy's healthy. He's QB1. So like Brock Purdy's walking into this thing kind of with not house money, but already, well, everybody expects him to be the guy. So I say, open it up. Kyle Shanahan, open this thing up and let's see who really goes out there in camp and shows out as QB1. And if it's an open competition, if I'm Trey Lance or if I'm someone in Trey Lance's corner, I tell him, you're playing with house money, in my opinion. People already don't expect you to win this job. People already expect them to trade you. People already feel this way. So you walk into camp and play free. Don't play with any stress or any extra weight on your shoulder. Play free, because Brock Purdy is the guy that's already been labeled QB1, even with you being healthy as well. So he got to come out there, and if you open it up and Trey Lance outperforms Brock, then it looks a little different. And I was like, okay, well, I want to kind of gave it to Brock a little too early, maybe.
Right. I want to ask you real quick, because this is the NFL draft show, right? So we talking about them as prospects, because we haven't seen, we've seen what, 12 games of Brock Purdy, if 12, maybe 10, 10 games of Brock Purdy. We've seen enough of Sam Darnold, and then we haven't seen very much of Trey Lance. So you feeling like Trey Lance is going to win this thing, or he should win this? Is that based off of who they were as draft prospects, right? Like, is that where you're having to pull some of your information from in who they were as draft prospects, with Trey Lance running a 4.4, being 6'4", and, rocket arm and things like that? Is that what you're kind of leaning on, is them as draft prospects?
Partially. I did, that does play a part. And again, the physical tools, and because at the end of the day, I always think about this. A scheme can get you so far, right? You can scheme things up and you can do, you can do that stuff to an extent, but eventually natural talent has to take over. And for me, it's like, if you, and the thing about it is, like, I went back and watched some of Trey Lance, from when he did play, when he was healthy prior to getting hurt. The offense wasn't run like this exact same as it was with Brock Purdy. Right. And what I would say is, offensive coordinators and play callers, your job is to give your quarterback the answers to the test before pen hits the paper. And so when Brock Purdy's coming out there and he's seeing these advantageous windows and opportunities, give that to Trey Lance and let's see what it looks like, right? Don't start running the zone read and QB power and all that just because he's mobile, right? Like, yeah, you can manufacture some of that in, but that shouldn't be the base of how you call plays for this young man. So that's what most like the who they were as prospects absolutely does play a part. But I just look at it, okay, I know that the scheme is going to do a lot for whoever's at quarterback. But the traits is what breaks the ceiling and can take this team from just being an NFC championship, appearance to a prominent Super Bowl champion, right? So that's kind of where I look at it in that situation, Keith.
Okay, cool. DP, listen, man, when there's a winner, there's a loser, right? So if somebody wins, somebody has to lose. So coming up next, we want to talk about, because this is 3 quarterbacks. 2 of those quarterbacks, I feel like, have relatively high draft value, in my opinion, right? You can get something back from them. So coming up next, we want to talk about what happens to the loser, right? Do you trade them? Do you sit them? Do you roll into next year? Knowing the injuries, I don't know why the 49ers have had to the quarterback position. Do you just decide to keep 3 quarterbacks because we might need 3 quarterbacks, right? So coming up next, we're going to talk about what happens to the loser. What should John Lynch do? What should Kyle Shanahan do after this training camp battle is over with?
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Guys, sometimes in life we're faced with tough choices and the path forward isn't always clear. Whether you're dealing with tough decisions around your career, relationships, or anything else, having a therapist, going to therapy can help you stay connected to what really helps you be able to navigate life so that you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make these decisions and align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the easier it gets for you. So if you've listen, I've benefited from therapy. I've gone to counseling, different things like that too. And I've worked in the field, and it helped me get through some of the toughest moments of my life. And even when I wasn't in it, I remember the things that we discussed to get me where I needed to be. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So guys, listen to me and listen to me well. Listen, go to if you want therapy to be your map with BetterHelp, visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Guys, when there's a winner, there's always a loser. And in this situation, Keith, you brought it up. What happens to the loser of the San Francisco 49ers quarterback battle? And you said something very interesting, because you look at 2022, they kept 3 quarterbacks. It was probably the best decision for them too, because their QB1 and QB2 both went down with major injuries, right? That's what Brock Purdy and the legend that is Glock Purdy, or whatever they call this young man, Mr. Relevant, whatever, that's where that legend grew. Because as him being QB3, typically you would think, man, he's on the practice squad. He doesn't have an active roster spot. He's not even on the team. But they kept all 3, and that was good for them. The question is, will they do that now? In your opinion, looking at this quarterback battle, what happens to whoever loses?
So, DP, you might as well clip this up, man. You might as well go ahead and clip this up.
Let me line you up.
I know what's going to happen. This is going to happen. San Francisco 49ers fans, this situation is going to remind you a lot of was that a la 2010, 2011, where I think the San Francisco 49ers are going to walk in with Brock Purdy as the starter, right? But Kyle Shanahan, he's going to have to pull a hardball, right? He's going to have to pull a hardball. He's going probably about week 6, week 7. I think he's going to make the move to Trey Lance as the starting quarterback. So essentially, I think they keep all 3 of them. They're going to keep Sam Darnold because he is the wily veteran. I think Brock Purdy will be the starter because they're comfortable with him. But Kyle Shanahan won't be able to help himself for seeing all the tools that Trey Lance has as a quarterback. So I believe by week 7, week 8, Trey Lance is going to be the starting quarterback for the 49ers.
Woo, that's a take, brother. I like it though. I like it.
I can see it just unfolding that way. And I with the hardball, right? I couldn't remember if it was Jim or John. I consistently get them. I think it's Jim. I'm gonna go with Jim. He had to do the same thing, right? It's like, okay, my offense gets here, and then now, like, what's the next level? And then I think also if you invoke Trey Lance, because we always talk about schematics, right, and scheme, and then I always talk about how other teams have film on you, right? And that week 8 its range is when your offense becomes kind of stale, when you really have to dive into your playbook to pull out new wrinkles. But DP, I think that if you invoke Trey Lance right now, you don't have that many tendencies because people haven't seen the full offense with Trey Lance or seen that version of the offense. So I think that's the type of momentum that the 49ers may need.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting take. I think for me, I would say this. If it depends on who loses. Like if Trey loses this battle, I think he's traded. You know what I mean? I think they feel like at the end of the day, we know how the NFL is, right? It's almost like dating, where somebody sees, oh man, he dumped Shorty, he dumped that girl, but they said that she got some bad tendencies, things that needs to work on. I can deal with her. Vice versa, if it's a female and see a dude get dumped, I can fix him, right? So NFL coaches look at it like, man, maybe Kyle Shanahan just didn't do what he needed to do with Trey Lance, and I would like to take my opportunity and bring him into the fold. And I think I've always said that the premium spot for a young quarterback, whether we talked about Malik Willis potentially yesterday on yesterday's show with the QB battle in Tennessee, Malik Willis, Trey Lance, either one of them. It's you think about the Minnesota Vikings and what they'll have weapon-wise, coaching, and maybe Kyle Shanahan isn't the type of coach that Trey Lance needs. Maybe he can't get the best out of Trey Lance. So if he loses this battle, then a Kevin O'Connell may be best suited to pull all of the goods out of the fruit that is Trey Lance, right? And things like that. So I think it depends. But also, I think Brock Purdy would get trade value. Like, teams saw him perform well last year.
Yep. I agree. I think Brock Purdy will have good trade value. And I could also see that being the case too, right? Like if I can see either one of these guys. Sam Darnold is just a guy I just don't see being traded just because he, I don't know how much value he has, right? At the end of the day.
Right.
But I can definitely see either one of these guys being traded. And one team that I thought about, and I'm wondering, I'm gonna hold that one for when we get to the Miami Dolphins. Okay. I kind of let the cat out the bag, right? Trey Lance with the Miami Dolphins, right? Because Mike McDaniel, I believe he was there for a year with Trey Lance. He did a year with them, so he'll be familiar with it. And I'm by no means trying to
replace Tua.
Yeah, like I'm not saying, but if that happens, right? If Tua, gets hurt again, or if there's something that happens with Tua contract, agreement, anything like that, right? Why not just bring Trey Lance in right now? Like just figure it out. Look, okay, we'll send you a 3rd-round pick for him, have him on the bench, so then that way you have some type of leverage moving forward with Tua Tagovailoa in the quarterback situation. But DP. That wraps up the 49ers, man. We spent a lot of time on the West Coast this morning. We're gonna, I know for sure we're gonna come back to this, right, at some point in the next month,
of course,
because there are gonna be a lot of things that unfold with that San Francisco 49ers conversation. But coming up next, man, we have our spotlight. What is spotlight? Spotlight, we're putting you could say we're putting a pressure on you, right? Like all the lights on you is to show up and show out. So coming up next, man, we have Russell Wilson. Broncos country, let's ride. We're putting a spotlight on them, talking about why. What do we think is going to happen throughout this training camp? What do we think some of the things that's going to reveal themselves? And how do we feel like Russell Wilson is going to perform?
The lights are bright in the training camp spotlight, and Russell Wilson stepped to this front and center, brother. You on stage now, and you by yourself. Innocence. We got Sean Payton. No more Nathaniel Hackett in 22 and 23 personnel packages that just did not work for you. You have one of the best offensive minds that we've seen from a head coach. He's in town now, but he's also a demanding head coach. He's a tough head coach. So the office and all the other stuff that they said was an issue, I don't foresee that being an issue with Sean Payton being there, and different things of that nature. But Russell Wilson, you have to come to the forefront, and it's time to ball out. They paid you. They traded a lot of draft capital to get you. The lights are bright now. Like the hype for the 2022 Denver Broncos guys, I'm gonna say this: it was warranted, right? You got a lot of weapons, run game, young defense, and it was like, man, they had Teddy Bridgewater, they had Drew Lock, they had just bad quarterback after bad quarterback. And it's like, oh, you get a Super Bowl champion, right? You get Russell Wilson, who has essentially helped carry the Seattle Seahawks after the Legion of Boom. You had a reason to be excited. And then everything fell down on its face. So when I look at this spotlight situation, Russell Wilson has to come out and for number one, this training camp, what I need to see from him is getting that chemistry with every receiver available. Marvin Mims, the rookie, Tim Patrick, who's returning from the ACL, Cortland Sutton, him and Jerry Jeudy already have a rapport, right? KJ Hamler is still there. That's 5 wide receivers right there. If all those guys are healthy, you got plenty of receiving options. But don't forget about Greg Dulcich. Try and find some rapport with Albert O. If you want to go to some 12 personnel packages that, for Sean Payton's offense, get in rhythm and get the chemistry with these weapons now. Because, Keith, I remember, I think it was against the Chargers? I think it was like a Thursday night game. It was against the Chargers, I believe it was, or against the Raiders, one of the two. And he missed KJ Hamler in the back of the end zone wide open because he was staring down the read. KJ is pissed off. He's jumping up and down the end zone. I think Russ picked. No, it was the Colts game. My bad. I remember it was the Colts game. I just remember it was a
bad game too.
It was a horrible game. And you know what I'm saying? So it's like those type of things where you're not staring down the one guy you trust. You know that, okay, he's not open, but I trust the other guys get open. Training camp is going to be big to start the propellers, to propel yourself to having a better and more successful 2023 season for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I'm expecting big things from Russell Wilson, and I'm expecting a lot of positive glows. So for the listeners don't know, I live in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge area, right? So when you're talking about Sean Payton, obviously I'm right next door to the New Orleans Saints. So I've seen a lot of Sean Payton over the last 15 years and watched a lot of probably 80-90% of Saints games, right? Because that's just the market I'm in. And I have full confidence in what Sean Payton can do, right? I watched him do it with Drew Brees, albeit Drew Brees Hall of Famer, right? But then he followed that up with, a Jameis Winston, right? Which the year before, Jameis Winston played pretty decent football before he got injured, right? And then he got Taysom Hill paid a lot of money, right? A BYU quarterback convert tight end back to quarterback to gadget player, right? So I'm just fully confident in what Sean Payton is going to do. I don't even want to say he's going to strip Russell Wilson down. It's not like we haven't seen a Hall of Fame version of Russell Wilson, right? Like the guys, it has been pretty doggone good, like 90% of his career. But I think he's going to force Russell to get back to the basics and the challenges, right? And of playing the quarterback position, because whatever Nathaniel Hackett did, and that's the part where I say we don't assign blame enough, right? And I feel the same way about Nathaniel Hackett the way I feel about Josh McDaniels with the Derek Carr situation. There's no way that a guy has been good to a Pro Bowl caliber football player, then you show up and he can't play football no more. You know what I'm saying? It's not his fault. Like I'm sorry, I'm not rolling with that. You're not convincing me that after 8-9 years, Russell Wilson can't play football anymore, right? So,
and Pete Carroll made him and all that type of
narrative that was being made. It's like what are we doing? That's just how I feel about it. So I'm expecting things to be extremely positive. And Sean, he is a no nonsense type of guy, but he is still also a down to earth person, right? So I think they're going to have some enjoyable moments in training camp. So I think that's why I'm putting the spotlight on him, because everybody's down on him, right? But this is a good team, DP. This team was in your region. Defensively, they check all the boxes, right? They have the defensive line, the second level, and the defensive backs. They check, right? They check the boxes defensively. Offensively, we've talked about their explosive weapons, and it's weird because Russell Wilson usually does pretty good with explosive guys, right? That's some of Russell Wilson's best work is off script and launching the ball 50 yards down the field, whether that be Tyler Lockett, whether that be Golden Tate, right? Whether that be DK Metcalf. Like that's just some of the things that he's done well with over his career. So I'm excited to see him with Sean Payton because I think this thing has a huge opportunity to turn around.
That, and I think the other part of the lights being bright too is Sean Payton is not going to play around and get to the 2024 draft class, and y'all have and the Denver Broncos have a horrible season and think he's running it back with Russ. Like, that's, you know what I mean?
That's why the spotlight is on him, right? I agree with you 100%. Like, and he made the comments about Caleb Williams, right? Which you don't know if the Broncos is going to be that bad. I don't know if he's going to be bad as the Cardinals, right? Like, you don't know if he'll get that bad. But there's still 3, 4, 5 other quarterbacks that Sean Payton, a quote-unquote quarterback guru, right, that knows how to develop these guys, he may feel comfortable with. So that's why, like, you agree. Like, I agree, right? That's why the spotlight is on him. Like Russell, you got to play good this year.
And what you brought up Caleb Williams, Keith. Sean Payton was I think he was the first person to throw out the generational tag of a generational talent on Caleb Williams. So you telling me if let's say they finish 13th pick in the draft, you think that Sean Payton wouldn't sell the farm to go up and get Caleb and say, I'm not dealing with this Russell Wilson stuff again. If he can't get it together, if Arizona has that first overall pick, but say the Arizona Cardinals don't want to eat that dead cap from the new contract they just gave Kyler Murray, and they can get a king's ransom of picks, and they already have 2 picks probably in the top 10. Well, I could absolutely see Sean Payton saying, what does Monty Austin Ford, what do you need for me to come up from 12 or 13 to 1, if that's the case? And then he goes up there and gets his quarterback that he wants to coach, that's on a cost-friendly deal, everything like that, man. So the spotlight for us to just rebound from 22 is already bright, but the spotlight also points to 2024 as a turning point in your illustrious career. How do you want to be remembered? This isn't a situation where you want to go out on bad terms. You want to go out swinging, balling, being Russell Wilson, not being the guy that we thought we knew as Russell Wilson. So, man, this was a great show, Keith. Like, training camp is giving us so many different storylines just with quarterbacks alone, guys. Just with quarterbacks alone. So I really had a lot of fun with this, Keith.
Yeah, no, I did too, man. We talked, like I said, we was on the West Coast for a minute, man. I have to go back to the West Coast and actually physically visit there. But nah, man, we talked 49ers training camp battle, right? Then we finished this thing off with Russell Wilson. That's kind of still on the West Coast. We in Colorado a little bit, so still kind of West Coast vibes, man. But like we said, man, we definitely appreciate y'all. We keeping this thing going, right? We love talking these quarterback training camp battles, right, in relations to the NFL draft, right? Whether that's the 2024 draft or whether that's these guys as draft prospects, because we know that we've been watching these guys since college, and a lot of these things still kind of translate to the NFL. So we definitely appreciate y'all tapping in. Tomorrow's show is even more quarterbacks, right? We can go different ways, right? We can go Kenny Pickett with the Steelers. We can go Sam Howell with the Commanders. We can go, I kind of teased it already, we may go Miami Dolphins. We may go from the West Coast to South Beach, Florida, man, and talk some Tua Tagovailoa. So, man, we definitely appreciate y'all tapping in with us. Make sure y'all tap in tomorrow because we're talking more quarterback and training camp battles.
Yes, sir. But as always, guys, thank y'all. Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it's available. Like he said, thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day, tapping in with us, being our family, but being the every single dayers. In terms of Twitter, you can find and follow Keith Sanchez at the talent code me, Damian Parson, DP_NFL. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.